The moment I pushed open that heavy oak door, I knew something was catastrophically wrong with this entire situation. The restaurant was far too quiet, too elegant, too intimidating for what was supposed to be a casual Tuesday night blind date my friend Sarah had enthusiastically set up just 3 days ago. She'd sworn repeatedly on her grandmother's grave that he was a nice, stable accountant named Mike who loved cats, classic movies, and long walks on the beach. But the man sitting at the corner table, surrounded by 3 imposing men in identical dark suits with obvious bulges under their jackets that could only be weapons, was definitely not an accountant. His eyes found mine across the dimly lit room before I could even think about retreating, and I froze like a deer caught in headlights on a dark highway. Dark, penetrating, and calculating, those eyes held me in place like a trapped animal facing down a predator. He leaned back casually in his chair, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across his devastatingly handsome face, and gestured with one elegant, ring-adorned hand for me to approach him immediately. My legs moved before my brain could override the command and stop them, carrying me forward against every screaming instinct telling me to turn around and run as fast as possible out that door. Every step felt like walking toward something inevitable, something that would fundamentally change my life forever in ways I couldn't begin to imagine. The men in dark suits stepped aside as I reached the table, creating a clear path directly to him. And that's when I noticed the gun holster barely concealed under one of their jackets, the metal catching the low restaurant light. My heart hammered violently against my ribs, and my palms started sweating uncomfortably. This was wrong. Everything about this entire situation was dangerously, terrifyingly wrong in every possible way. If you're enjoying this story so far, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps me continue creating stories like this one for you. Thank you so much for your support. It means everything. The man at the table stood with fluid, predatory grace, and I had to tilt my head back significantly to meet his intense gaze. He was exceptionally tall, easily over 6 feet, powerfully built with broad shoulders that filled out his custom-tailored charcoal suit absolutely perfectly, with dark hair styled in that effortlessly perfect way that probably required an expensive stylist and premium products I couldn't afford in a lifetime. His suit alone probably cost more than my entire year's rent on my cramped studio apartment in the bad part of town. He extended his hand toward me with confidence, and I noticed everything in that suspended moment. The expensive platinum watch on his wrist that gleamed in the low candlelight, the heavy silver signet ring on his pinky finger, bearing some kind of elaborate family crest I didn't recognize. The way his long fingers were both elegant and strong, like a concert pianist, who could also strangle someone without breaking a sweat or leaving evidence behind. His handshake was firm, warm, and sent an unexpected jolt of electricity shooting up my arm and spreading through my chest like wildfire. I tried to pull away quickly, desperately wanting to break that intimate physical connection, but he held on just a second longer than socially necessary or appropriate, his thumb deliberately brushing against the sensitive skin of my inner wrist in a way that felt intentional. The touch was calculated, possessive, claiming, and it made my breath catch painfully in my throat, despite my overwhelming fear. His skin was warm, his grip confident, and something about that simple touch made my entire body respond in ways I absolutely didn't want to acknowledge or examine too closely right now. "I'm sorry, I think I have the wrong table," I stammered awkwardly, finally managing to extract my trembling hand from his warm, confident grasp. My voice came out higher than normal, shaky with poorly concealed fear that I'm sure he noticed immediately. "I'm looking for someone named Mike. Mike Henderson. He's supposed to be an accountant who works downtown. This is clearly a mistake, some kind of mix-up with the reservation system." His smile widened considerably, revealing perfectly straight white teeth that had probably cost a small fortune in orthodontic work. There was genuine amusement dancing in those impossibly dark eyes, but also something dangerous lurking beneath the surface, something predatory that made my skin prickle with both primal fear and an unwelcome, confusing thrill that I absolutely refused to acknowledge or think about. "Mike canceled rather suddenly this evening," he said smoothly, his voice deep and rich like aged whiskey, with just the faintest hint of an accent I couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe, or something Mediterranean. "But I absolutely don't mind the substitution at all. In fact, I'm quite pleased with this arrangement. Please sit down and join me for dinner. I insist." It wasn't really a polite request despite the courteous words and gentlemanly tone. The way he said it with that underlying steel in his voice, the way his security team positioned themselves strategically around our table, effectively blocking any easy exit routes, the way his penetrating eyes never left mine for even a split second. It was abundantly clear that refusing wasn't really an option I should seriously consider if I valued my personal safety. My rational mind screamed frantically at me to make up some believable excuse and leave immediately, to run out that door and never look back at this dangerous situation. But my treacherous, apparently suicidal body was already sinking obediently into the plush velvet chair across from him, as if drawn by some powerful magnetic force I couldn't resist or explain. "I'm Dante," he said with casual confidence, reaching for the expensive crystal wine decanter positioned on the table and pouring rich burgundy wine into the elaborate crystal glass positioned in front of me with practiced, elegant ease. His movements were smooth, controlled, like everything he did was calculated. "Dante Moretti, and you are..." The name hit me with the devastating force of a freight train derailing at full speed. Even someone as deliberately disconnected from the criminal underworld as I tried to be had heard that name whispered in frightened, reverent tones throughout the city. Dante Moretti, the youngest, most ruthless crime boss in the entire city's violent, bloody history. Ruthless, powerful, intelligent, and allegedly personally responsible for systematically cleaning up the streets by brutally eliminating the drug trade that had plagued our struggling working-class neighborhoods for over a decade, through methods the newspapers only hinted at. The media called him a vicious monster, without conscience or mercy. The people in my working-class community whispered about him with a complicated mixture of genuine fear and grudging, reluctant respect. Some said he was worse than the drug dealers he'd eliminated. Others claimed he'd saved the neighborhood from destroying itself completely, that he was a necessary evil in an imperfect world. My hand shook visibly as I reached automatically for the wine glass, the delicate crystal nearly slipping from my trembling fingers. "I'm Emma," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "Emma Rodriguez, and I really, truly should go right now." "This is obviously a mistake, some kind of terrible mix-up. Should you go?" He leaned forward deliberately, resting his elbows on the pristine white tablecloth, bringing his handsome face dangerously closer to mine across the intimate space between us. I could smell his cologne now, something undoubtedly expensive and intoxicating with notes of cedar, leather, and something darker, more mysterious that made my head spin slightly. "Or are you simply scared of me, Emma Rodriguez? There's an important difference between wisdom and cowardice, you know." "I'm absolutely terrified," I admitted with complete, brutal honesty, meeting his eyes directly despite my overwhelming fear. There seemed no point whatsoever in lying to a man who probably made his substantial living reading people's unconscious tells and detecting even the smallest deception. "You're Dante Moretti. Everyone in this city knows who you are and what you do for a living." That honest admission seemed to genuinely surprise him in a way he hadn't expected. His dark eyebrows raised slightly in what looked like authentic surprise, and then he laughed. It was a surprisingly genuine sound, rich and warm and full of real amusement, completely at odds with the dangerous, threatening aura surrounding him like an invisible force field. "At least you're refreshingly honest with me, which is rare. I sincerely appreciate that quality, Emma Rodriguez. Most people lie directly to my face with elaborate stories and think I don't immediately notice every tell, every micro-expression. What actually happened to Mike?" I asked directly, trying desperately to understand how I'd ended up in this absolutely surreal, dangerous situation that felt like something from a movie. "Did you hurt him? Is he okay? Where is he?" Dante's expression darkened noticeably, dangerous shadows crossing his handsome features. "Your friend Sarah owes some very dangerous people a substantial amount of money from her gambling addiction that spiraled out of control. Those people she's indebted to work for my organization, are under my protection." When she mentioned casually setting you up on a blind date tonight at this specific restaurant, certain arrangements were efficiently made behind the scenes. Mike was generously compensated financially for his sudden absence tonight, probably more money than he makes in 6 months. Sarah's considerable debt is now completely cleared and forgiven, wiped from our books. And you're sitting here across from me, having dinner with me instead of some boring accountant who probably would have bored you to tears talking about tax returns. Everyone benefits from this arrangement, really. The shocking revelation hit me like ice-cold water being dumped over my head, stealing my breath. Sarah, my supposed best friend since our freshman year of college when we'd been randomly assigned as roommates, had essentially sold me out like merchandise to pay off her dangerous gambling debt. My closest friend for 8 years had literally traded me to the Mafia like I was some kind of commodity or bargaining chip, something to be exchanged for value. Sharp hurt and bitter betrayal warred violently with the cold fear churning sickeningly in my stomach, making me feel physically ill. So I'm what exactly, collateral? Payment for her debts? Some kind of human transaction to balance her books? Absolutely not. Dante's answer came immediately and firmly, with unmistakable conviction ringing in his deep voice. His expression turned serious, almost offended by my suggestion. Your presence here tonight clears her entire debt completely. Yes, but you are absolutely free to leave any time you want, without any consequences whatsoever to you or anyone you care about. I give you my word. I won't stop you or send anyone after you if you walk away right now. He gestured openly toward the restaurant's main door, with a graceful movement of his hand. But I would very much like you to stay voluntarily. Have dinner with me. Talk with me like two normal people on a date. Let me get to know the fascinating woman who walked into the wrong blind date tonight, with her head held high and her courage intact despite obvious, justifiable fear. And if I choose to leave right now, I had to know the truth, had to understand the real parameters and boundaries of this bizarre situation I'd found myself in. Then you simply leave, walk out that door, and go home safely. Sarah's debt is cleared regardless of your decision tonight. I always keep my word, Emma. Always. My reputation and my honor depend on it. And reputation is everything in my world. His eyes held mine with scorching intensity that made leaving feel somehow impossible despite his words giving me permission. But I genuinely hope you'll stay and give me a chance. I should have left immediately without hesitation. Every single rational cell in my body told me urgently to stand up, walk out that heavy door, and never look back at this dangerous man and his dangerous world. Instead, shocking myself completely, I picked up my wine glass with still trembling hands and took a tentative sip, making my choice. It was hands down the best wine I'd ever tasted in my entire life, smooth and rich and complex with layers of flavor, probably worth significantly more than my weekly grocery budget. Dante's smile returned instantly, looking genuinely pleased and slightly predatory, like a hunter who'd successfully lured his prey exactly where he wanted them. Tell me about yourself, Emma, he said with apparent genuine interest, leaning back comfortably in his chair. Suddenly, we were on what seemed like a relatively normal date, except for the heavily armed guards standing watch, and the undeniable fact that my dinner companion was one of the most dangerous men in the entire city, possibly the entire state. I'm a third-grade teacher at Roosevelt Elementary on the South Side, I said, because what else was I supposed to say to a crime boss? My life was embarrassingly boring compared to whatever he did in his dangerous world of violence and money. I teach 8-year-olds reading and mathematics and basic science. I have a cat named Mr. Whiskers who's extremely judgmental of all my life choices. I live alone in a tiny studio apartment that I can barely afford on my teacher's salary, even with summer tutoring jobs. I'm exceptionally, painfully ordinary in every possible way you can imagine. You walked alone into a room full of dangerous armed men without immediately running away screaming, Dante observed thoughtfully, his long fingers tracing the rim of his wine glass in a hypnotic, mesmerizing pattern. That's definitely not ordinary behavior by any standard. That demonstrates either remarkable bravery or perhaps foolishness, recklessness. I honestly haven't decided which yet. Maybe it's both qualities combined. Probably foolish, I admitted ruefully, taking another sip of the incredible wine. But I was raised by my father to always face my fears directly and honestly. He always said that running away just makes predators chase you harder and more aggressively, triggers their hunting instincts. Stand your ground, look them in the eye. He'd tell me constantly growing up. Something significant flickered in Dante's dark eyes. Respect, perhaps, or genuine interest. Maybe both emotions combined. Your father sounds like he was a genuinely wise man with important life experience and hard-won knowledge. He was incredibly wise about so many things. He died 3 years ago from pancreatic cancer. The familiar, painful ache settled heavily in my chest, like it always did when I thought about him. I hadn't meant to share something so personal with this dangerous stranger, but something about Dante's intense, focused attention made words spill out uncontrollably, bypassing my normal filters. "I'm truly sorry for your loss, Emma." And he sounded like he genuinely meant it. Real sympathy and understanding softening his dangerous features in a way that made him look younger, more vulnerable. His hand reached across the table, covering mine briefly. The touch was surprisingly gentle, comforting, completely unexpected from a man with his violent reputation. Losing a parent permanently changes you as a person at a fundamental level, makes you see the entire world differently. Nothing is ever quite the same afterward. You carry that loss forever. "You've lost someone important too," I said with sudden certainty, reading the shadow in his expression. It wasn't really a question. I could see the ghost of old grief crossing his handsome face. "My mother, when I was only 16 years old." He pulled his hand back slowly, taking another measured sip of wine, his eyes distant with memory. "She was murdered by rivals. She was the only person who genuinely saw me as more than what I was becoming, more than my reputation, and my father's legacy. She believed firmly I could be truly good, despite everything happening around us, despite the violence and the blood." The raw vulnerability in his quiet admission genuinely shocked me to my core. This wasn't the cold, ruthlessly efficient mobster from the sensational news stories and whispered rumors on street corners. This was a real man carrying deep, unhealed grief, showing me an honest glimpse of something authentic beneath the carefully constructed, dangerous exterior he presented to the world. It made him human in a way that actually scared me more than his fearsome reputation did, because humans were complicated, messy, and complications led to feelings I absolutely had no business developing for someone like him, someone who lived in a world of violence. Dinner arrived, brought by extremely nervous waiters who carefully avoided making direct eye contact with everyone at our table, especially Dante. The food was absolutely exquisite. Course after elaborate course of perfectly prepared dishes I couldn't even properly pronounce despite my minor in Spanish. Dante watched me taste everything with evident pleasure, seeming to genuinely enjoy my reactions to each new flavor and texture. "You're really not what I expected at all," I said between elaborate courses, growing bolder from the excellent wine and the strange, unexpected intimacy developing between us in this dimly lit corner of the restaurant. "What exactly did you expect from me?" Dante leaned back comfortably, studying me with those penetrating dark eyes that seemed to see straight through every defense and wall I'd ever constructed around myself. A monster, honestly. Someone genuinely cruel and cold and threatening who'd intimidate me or threaten me into staying here against my will through fear. I met his intense gaze directly, refusing to look away or back down. Not someone who'd give me an actual choice to leave. Definitely not someone who'd talk openly about his mother and show real, genuine emotion. "You're confusing every expectation I had." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, a muscle jumping. "I am a monster, Emma. Please don't mistake one evening of relative civility for genuine redemption or goodness. I've done terrible things that would make you run screaming into the night if you knew the specific details, if you saw the files. I've hurt people deliberately. I've killed people with my own hands, watched the life leave their eyes. I run a large criminal organization that operates completely outside the law." He leaned forward again, and his voice dropped lower, more dangerous, more brutally honest. "But I have strict rules I never break under any circumstances. I don't ever hurt innocent people or children. I don't traffic drugs or people, unlike my competitors. I don't prey on the weak or helpless. And I absolutely don't lie to women I'm genuinely interested in romantically." "Interested in?" My voice came out considerably breathier than I'd intended, betraying my physical reaction to him. "Very interested," he confirmed without hesitation, his eyes dropping deliberately to my lips, then slowly back up to meet my eyes. "From the exact moment you walked through that door looking terrified but absolutely determined, something in my chest tightened painfully. You're beautiful, yes, undeniably so. But many women are beautiful. Beauty is common in my world. You're different somehow. Real. Genuine. Unimpressed by the money and the power and the reputation. When you looked at me, you saw a real person underneath everything. Not just a position or a title or a bank account. My heart was racing now, pounding so hard I was certain he could hear it across the table, and not entirely from fear anymore. The attraction was absolutely undeniable, crackling between us like electrical current, like lightning about to strike. He was dangerous, possibly evil, definitely wrong for me in every single conceivable way according to logic and reason. But he was also magnetic, brutally honest in a refreshing way, and looking at me like I was the only person in the entire world who mattered, the only person who'd ever truly seen him. "This is completely insane," I whispered, shaking my head in disbelief at the situation. "I should be calling the police right now, not having dinner with you and enjoying your company and this incredible food. The police won't help you, Emma. Half of them are on my organization's payroll, receiving regular payments to look the other way. The other half are too smart and too cautious to come after me without absolutely ironclad evidence and airtight cases." He said it completely matter-of-factly, without arrogance or bragging, just stating facts. "But you don't need any protection from me specifically. I told you, you're completely free to go whenever you want." "I mean that. And why does it feel like I'm already trapped somehow?" The question escaped before I could stop it, revealing more vulnerability than I'd wanted to show. Dante's smile was slow, dangerous, and devastatingly attractive in the candlelight. "Because you feel it too, this pull between us, this undeniable chemistry. I could let you walk away tonight and never contact you again. Respect your decision completely, but we both know you'd wonder constantly. You'd think about this dinner, about me, about what might have happened if you'd stayed longer and taken a chance on something unexpected." He was absolutely right, and I hated that he was right, hated that he could read me so easily. Something significant was happening here, something reckless and stupid and completely irresistible. I'd lived my entire cautious life playing it safe, following all the rules, being responsible and careful like my father taught me. And where had it gotten me? A tiny apartment, a meager teacher's salary, a best friend who'd traded me to pay off her debts, and a string of failed relationships with safe men who'd bored me to tears within weeks. Chapter 4. The Proposition. "What do you actually want from me?" I asked directly, needing desperately to understand his endgame, his real motivation for arranging this entire evening. Dante was quiet for a long, thoughtful moment, his expression uncharacteristically uncertain for someone who seemed so confident and in control. When he finally spoke, his words were careful, measured, vulnerable in a way I hadn't expected. "Honestly, I don't know yet. I wasn't expecting you tonight at all. I was supposed to have a routine business dinner with associates to discuss territory agreements. But you walked in, all fire and fear and courage combined, and something fundamental shifted inside me, something I haven't felt in years. I want to know you on a deeper level. I want to see you again. I want to discover if this feeling is real or just some strange anomaly, a fluke. And if I say no to seeing you again, then I respect that decision completely and absolutely. You go home, back to your normal life, and I become a strange story you tell over drinks with friends someday. An interesting anecdote." His eyes held mine with burning intensity that made my skin heat. "But if you say yes, if you agree to see me again, I promise to show you a side of life you've never experienced before. I'll protect you with everything I have, cherish you, and never lie to you about anything important. But I absolutely cannot promise safety or normalcy. My world is dangerous. People want me dead constantly. Being associated with me romantically puts a target on your back, makes you a potential weakness enemies could exploit." It was the most honest, straightforward proposition I'd ever received in my entire life. No false promises, no sugarcoating, no manipulation, just brutal truth laid bare. Most men would have lied, would have downplayed the danger significantly, would have manipulated me into saying yes through charm or deception. Dante was giving me every single reason to refuse, which perversely made me want to accept even more, because his honesty was refreshing. "I need time to think about this carefully," I said finally, my mind spinning with possibilities and fears. He nodded understanding, pulling an elegant business card from his inner jacket pocket and sliding it across the table toward me. It was heavy cardstock, expensive, with just a phone number embossed in silver. No name, no title, no address. "Call me when you decide. Or don't call me. The choice is entirely yours, Emma Rodriguez. No pressure, no consequences either way." One of his security men appeared at his elbow, leaning down to whisper something urgent in his ear. Dante's expression hardened instantly, all traces of the vulnerable man who'd shared his grief disappearing like smoke. This was the crime boss, the dangerous predator. He stood smoothly, buttoning his suit jacket, and looked down at me with visible regret. "I have to go. Business that unfortunately can't wait any longer. He gestured to one of his men standing nearby. Marco will drive you home safely. Your address won't be shared with me unless you choose to share it yourself. Your privacy is important. I can take a cab, I protested weakly. It's late, and this neighborhood isn't safe at night for a woman alone, especially someone as beautiful as you. Please, let Marco drive you. Consider it my apology for the unconventional evening and the fear I caused. Before I could argue further, he took my hand gently, raising it to his lips. The kiss he pressed to my knuckles was soft, gentle, reverent, and sent heat flooding through my entire body like wildfire. His eyes met mine over our joined hands, and I saw promise there, danger there, and something that might have been longing or hope. Then he was gone, swept away by his security team like a hurricane passing, leaving me sitting alone at the table with Marco standing respectfully at a distance. I touched my knuckles where his lips had been, feeling the ghost of that kiss, my mind spinning with everything that had happened in the last 2 hours. Marco turned out to be surprisingly chatty and fatherly on the drive home to my apartment across town. He was older, maybe in his 50s, with kind eyes and a fatherly demeanor that seemed completely at odds with his occupation as a mobster. I've worked for Mr. Moretti for 10 years now, he told me as we navigated the city streets. Never once seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you tonight. That was different, special. He's never brought anyone to that restaurant. He barely knows me, I protested weakly, watching the city lights pass by the window. Marco chuckled knowingly, a warm sound. Mr. Moretti reads people the way you probably read children's books to your 3rd-grade students. It's a gift, a survival skill. He saw something real in you tonight, something that matters to him personally, not just business. He's a criminal, I said, though it sounded weak and unconvincing even to my own ears. He's complicated, Marco corrected gently but firmly. Good and bad mixed together, like most people in this world. But he's fiercely loyal to those he cares about, and he protects this neighborhood better than the police ever did or ever will. My daughter can walk home from her restaurant job at night now without being harassed by drug dealers or gang members. That's because of him, because of what he did. I didn't know what to say to that observation. The moral ambiguity was making my head spin uncomfortably. How could someone who broke the law be good? How could violence and crime lead to safety and protection? Nothing about this situation fit into the neat categories and moral absolutes I'd lived my life by. Marco pulled up carefully in front of my building, escorting me to the door like a true gentleman. Whatever you decide, Ms. Rodriguez, know that Mr. Moretti will respect it completely. He's many things, but he's a man of his word. That's rare in our world. I trudged up the 3 flights of stairs to my apartment, my mind a chaotic mess of conflicting emotions and thoughts. Mr. Whiskers greeted me at the door, meowing indignantly about his delayed dinner and lack of attention. I fed him his favorite food, changed into comfortable pajamas, and sat on my worn couch, staring at the elegant business card Dante had given me. My phone buzzed insistently on the coffee table. Sarah. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again, and again. Finally, after the 10th buzz, I answered reluctantly, Emma, I'm so sorry. Sarah's voice was teary, panicked, desperate. I didn't know what else to do. They were going to hurt me, break my legs. I thought, maybe, if you just had dinner with him, my debt would be cleared and nothing would happen to you. I never meant for anything bad. You sold me out, I interrupted, my voice cold and hard in a way it had never been with her before. You set me up on a fake blind date with a crime boss to pay off your gambling debts. Do you understand how insane that is? How dangerous that could have been? I could have been hurt or killed. But you're okay, right? You're home safe? Did he hurt you at all? No, I admitted reluctantly. He was a gentleman, actually. More of a gentleman than most men I've dated. Sarah's relief was palpable through the phone. See? I knew it would be fine. Dante's not as bad as people say. He's actually helped a lot of people in the neighborhood. And he's gorgeous, right? Maybe something good could come from this situation. Her casual attitude about the whole situation infuriated me beyond words. We're done, Sarah. I can't trust you anymore. Lose my number immediately. I hung up before she could respond, blocking her contact immediately. The betrayal stung more than I wanted to admit. We'd been friends for 8 years, and she'd traded me like currency without a second thought about my safety. Sleep didn't come easily that night, despite my exhaustion. I tossed and turned restlessly, replaying every single moment of the dinner like a movie. Dante's intense eyes, his honest admission of his crimes, the gentleness of his kiss on my hand, the way he'd given me the power to choose, the vulnerability when he'd mentioned his murdered mother, the electricity that had crackled between us. By morning, I was exhausted and no closer to a decision that made sense. I went through my routine mechanically like a robot, getting ready for work, preparing lessons for my students. My third graders were doing a unit on community helpers, and the irony of teaching about police officers and firefighters while contemplating a relationship with a crime boss wasn't lost on me. During lunch in the teacher's lounge, I pulled out Dante's card, staring at the number embossed in silver. My colleague Jennifer noticed immediately. "Ooh, someone new? What's his name? You look conflicted." "Dante," I said without thinking. "That's exotic and romantic. What does he do for a living?" I almost laughed at the absurdity of the situation. "He's in import-export business." It was probably technically true, even if the imports and exports were illegal goods and services. "Well, he must be seriously interested if he gave you his personal number instead of asking for yours. You should definitely call him." Should I? Every logical part of my brain screamed no emphatically. Dating a mobster was career suicide, possibly actual suicide. It went against everything I believed in, everything I'd built my life around. I was a teacher, a role model for children. What kind of example was I setting if I got involved with organized crime? But then I remembered his words about taking chances. I'd lived my whole life playing it safe, following the rules, and where had it gotten me? My apartment was lonely. My relationships were failures. My best friend had betrayed me. Maybe it was time to take a risk, to step outside my comfort zone, to see what existed beyond the narrow path I'd always followed obediently. I called during my planning period, my hands shaking as I dialed the number. He answered on the second ring. "Emma." His voice was warm, pleased, hopeful. Just hearing him say my name sent shivers down my spine. "I've made my decision," I said, trying to sound confident and certain. And there was tension in that single word, like my answer mattered more than he wanted to admit even to himself. "I want to see you again, but we need ground rules, boundaries." I could hear the smile in his voice. "I'm listening carefully. First, you're honest with me, always. I don't need to know the details of your business, but don't lie to me about important things. Second, my career is important to me. I won't do anything that jeopardizes my job or puts my students at risk. Third, I can walk away anytime I want without consequences. If I decide this isn't working, you let me go. Clean break. No drama." "Agreed completely," Dante said without hesitation or negotiation. "And I have one rule of my own that's important to me." "What's that?" "You give us, a real chance. Don't keep one foot out the door waiting for me to confirm your worst assumptions about who I am. I'm not perfect, Emma. I'm going to make mistakes. But I want you to see all of me, not just the monster the media portrays, not just the rumors." It was fair. More than fair. "Okay. When do you want to see me?" "Tonight. I'll pick you up at 7. Wear something comfortable, casual." He ended the call before I could ask where we were going, and I spent the rest of the day alternating between excitement and terror. What was I doing? This was insane, but it also felt like the first truly spontaneous, exciting thing I'd done in years. At 7 sharp, there was a knock on my door. I'd changed outfits 4 times, finally settling on jeans and a nice blouse. When I opened the door, Dante stood there in dark jeans and a black Henley that showed off his muscular build. He looked younger, more relaxed, devastatingly handsome without the suit. "You look beautiful," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made me blush. "Where are we going?" I asked, grabbing my jacket. "You'll see. It's a surprise." He drove himself this time, no security detail visible, in a sleek black car that probably cost more than I'd make in 5 years of teaching. We headed out of the city, the conversation flowing easily and naturally. He asked about my students, seeming genuinely interested in the small details of my day. I asked about his mother, and he shared stories that made her come alive. Her laugh, her stubbornness, her love of opera. We ended up at a small overlook outside the city limits. Dante had brought a blanket and a picnic basket. Under the stars, we ate sandwiches from a deli. He swore made the best Italian food outside of Italy, drank wine, and talked for hours about everything and nothing. He told me about growing up in the organization, How his father had been a captain who'd been killed in a territory dispute when Dante was young. How he'd risen through the ranks by being smarter and more ruthless than his competitors. "I eliminated the drug trade in our territory completely," he said, staring out at the city lights twinkling below. "Not because I'm noble or good, but because I watched what it did to my neighborhood growing up. Kids getting hooked, families destroyed, lives ruined. It's bad business and worse morality. I might be a criminal, Emma, but I have lines I won't cross under any circumstances. That's why people in the community respect you," I said. "Marco told me his daughter feels safe now walking home at night." Dante turned to me, surprise evident on his face. "Marco told you that? On the drive home last night. He seems very loyal to you. Protective even. He's a good man. One of the few in my organization who has a conscience and a moral compass." Dante's expression softened. "I try to employ people who need second chances. Ex-cons who can't get legitimate work. People the system has failed and abandoned. I pay them well, give them respect and purpose, and in return, I get loyalty you can't buy." Over the next few weeks, Dante became a fixture in my life in ways I hadn't anticipated. He'd show up at my apartment with dinner after long days. We'd walk through the park on weekends holding hands. He'd text me good morning and good night every single day without fail. He never pushed for more than I was willing to give, content to hold my hand, to kiss my forehead, to be patient in a way that made me fall harder for him every day. He met Mr. Whiskers and won the judgmental cat over with expensive treats and gentle scratches behind the ears. He fixed the leaky faucet in my bathroom without being asked. He sent flowers to my classroom with notes that made me smile and my coworkers jealous. He was attentive, thoughtful, and yes, still dangerous, but never to me. I met more of his people gradually. Marco became a real friend, checking in on me like a surrogate father I hadn't known I needed. I met Dante's accountant, a sharp woman named Gloria, who managed his legitimate businesses and kept everything running smoothly, who treated me with respect. I saw the community center he funded anonymously, the food bank he stocked regularly, the scholarships he provided for neighborhood kids who wanted to go to college. But I also saw the reality of his world up close. The night someone tried to ambush him outside a restaurant where we'd been having dinner, the way he'd shielded me with his body, the gunshots echoing in the night air like fireworks. His men had handled the threat efficiently, and Dante had held me while I shook with terror and adrenaline, whispering apologies into my hair, cursing himself for putting me in danger. "This is my life," he'd said grimly afterward. "This is the danger I warned you about. If you want to leave, I understand completely." But I didn't leave. I couldn't. I was in love with him, wholly and completely, despite the insanity of it all. He'd become essential to me, the first thing I thought about when I woke up, and the last thing on my mind before sleep. One evening, 3 months into our relationship, Dante took me to his penthouse for the first time. It was enormous, decorated with expensive art and furniture, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, but it felt sterile, empty, like a showroom rather than a home. "I don't spend much time here," he admitted, seeing my expression. "It's more of a fortress than a home. I keep my real life separate from business as much as possible." "What's your real life?" I asked softly. He pulled me close, his arms wrapping around my waist, his forehead resting against mine. You're my real life now, Emma. You and your terrible judgmental cat, and your stories about your students and the way you make me feel human again instead of just a monster." I kissed him then, really kissed him for the first time. All the tension and attraction that had been building exploded between us. His hands tangled in my hair, mine fisted in his shirt. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, his eyes were dark with desire and something deeper. "I love you," he said. "I know it's too soon. I know it's complicated, but I love you. You make me want to be better than I am." "I love you too," I whispered, and it was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Everything shattered 2 weeks later. I was leaving school after a late parent-teacher conference when a black SUV pulled up suddenly. Not Dante's vehicle. 2 men I didn't recognize got out, their expressions hard and unfriendly. Before I could react or scream, they had me in the vehicle, speeding away from the school. Terror clawed at my throat. One of the men made a phone call. "We have the girl. Moretti's girl. Tell the boss the message has been sent." They took me to a warehouse on the outskirts of the city, tied me to a chair in a cold, dark room. My mind raced. trying to remember everything Dante had told me about his rivals and enemies. This had to be the Castellano family, the organization that had been trying to expand into Dante's territory for years. An older man entered, expensive suit, cold eyes, radiating cruelty. Ms. Rodriguez. I apologize for the rough treatment, but Dante Moretti needs to learn a lesson about respecting boundaries and sharing territory. He'll kill you for this, I said, trying to sound brave despite my shaking voice. The man laughed. He'll try, but first, he'll watch you suffer. Then he'll agree to our terms. Then maybe, if he's lucky, we'll let you live to teach your little students again. Time became meaningless in that room. Hours passed slowly. They didn't hurt me physically, but the psychological torture of waiting, of wondering if Dante would find me, was excruciating. I thought about my students, about Mr. Whiskers, about Dante and the future we'd started to build together. Then the door exploded inward violently. Gunfire erupted. Dante appeared through the smoke and chaos like an avenging angel, his expression absolutely murderous. He had a gun in each hand, and he moved with lethal precision, taking down the men who'd guarded me with ruthless efficiency I'd never witnessed. In seconds, it was over. Bodies on the floor. Silence except for my gasping breaths. Dante holstered his guns and was at my side immediately, cutting through the ropes, gathering me into his arms. I've got you. You're safe. I've got you, he repeated like a mantra, his hands checking me for injuries, his voice shaking with emotion I'd never heard from him before. The aftermath was brutal and swift. Dante eliminated the Castellano family's leadership that night. It was swift, merciless, and sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld. The message was clear. Anyone who touched me would face complete annihilation. I should have been horrified. I should have run from the violence, from the blood on his hands. But instead, I held him while he shook with the aftermath of almost losing me, while he whispered apologies and promises. I can't do this to you, he said, his voice broken. I almost got you killed. You deserve better than a life lived in constant fear of my enemies. Don't you dare, I said fiercely, grabbing his face and forcing him to look at me. Don't you dare use this as an excuse to push me away from my own good. We both knew the risks going in. I chose this. I chose you. And I'm choosing you right now again. Emma, I love you. The real you. The dangerous you. The gentle you. The man who brings me coffee in the morning and the man who destroyed an entire organization to save me. All of you. That doesn't change because things got scary. That's when it matters most. He kissed me then, desperate and grateful and full of love. When we finally pulled apart, he pressed his forehead to mine. Marry me. What? I gasped. Marry me. Be my wife. Let me spend the rest of my life protecting you, cherishing you, and being worthy of the gift you've given me by loving someone like me. It was insane. We'd known each other for less than 4 months. He was a crime boss. I was an elementary school teacher. We came from completely different worlds, but nothing about our relationship had ever been conventional, so why should this be different? Yes, I said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, I'll marry you. 6 months later, we were married in a small private ceremony. Marco walked me down the aisle with tears in his eyes. Gloria was my maid of honor. Dante cried when he saw me in my dress. We exchanged vows promising love, honesty, and acceptance of all the complications that came with our unique union. The Castellano family's old boss, the one who'd ordered my kidnapping, was tried and convicted thanks to evidence Dante had carefully compiled and anonymously submitted to authorities. He got life in prison without parole. Justice, in its own way. Dante began slowly transitioning his organization toward more legitimate businesses, using his power and connections to create opportunities rather than enforce them through violence. It was a long, difficult process, and he'd never be completely clean, but he was trying. For me, for us, for the future we wanted to build together. I never stopped teaching. My students never knew who my husband really was. To them, he was just Mr. Moretti, who sometimes came to read stories at our school's literacy days, and who funded new computers for our library anonymously. Our life wasn't perfect. It was complicated and sometimes scary, but it was ours. I'd walked into the wrong blind date and found the right person. He'd laughed and said I was exactly his type. And somehow, against all odds, We'd built something real and lasting. Love doesn't always make sense. It doesn't always follow the rules. Sometimes it walks through the wrong door and finds you anyway. And when it does, when you find that person who sees all of you and loves you not despite your flaws but including them, you hold on tight and never let go. That's what we did. We held on, and we built a life that was uniquely ours, full of love, laughter, and the occasional reminder that sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected beginnings. 2 years later, I stood in our new home, one hand on my growing belly, watching Dante play with Mr. Whiskers in the garden. He'd kept every single promise. He'd protected me. He'd cherished me. He'd become better. And I'd learned that sometimes the most dangerous choice leads to the safest place to call home. Thank you so much for reading this complete story. If you enjoyed Emma and Dante's journey together, I'd be incredibly grateful if you'd like this video and subscribe to the channel for more romantic stories. And please, drop a comment below telling me your favorite moment. Was it when they first met? Or maybe the rescue scene? I absolutely love hearing from you all. Your support means the world. Thank you for being here.